Anybody who preaches a gospel like the health, wealth, and prosperity heretics, anybody who preaches a gospel where God is your servant and you can command God, okay, that's not biblical Christianity. Because the God of the Bible is not some wimp God. The God of the Bible is the God who created the heavens and the earth. The God of the Bible is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The God of the Bible is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. The God of the Bible isn't your little servant who will get you whatever you want because you commanded him to. Okay? And that, you might think, well, nobody would say that we command God. Yes, I'm paraphrasing what these guys have said time and time again. Now, the founder of the Word of Faith movement was a guy named Kenneth Hagin. Okay? He was into positive confession. As long as you speak positive words and you can name it and claim it, you can claim a Corvette in Jesus' name, you know. And I heard one of their preachers, he was a little more honest. He was just, reality was kind of shaking him from his views, but he'd tell people, he said, man, he was a pastor, he said, I got my fingerprints all over all the nice church buildings in town. And God says, no, I'm not giving you that building. So and this guy was laying his hands and naming and claiming Corvettes in Jesus' name, and he'd get a Chevy Chevette, not a Corvette. But it's a positive confession. You create your own reality through the power of your mind. This is not biblical Christianity. They teach that any believers who have no unconfessed sin and have no lack of faith, they'll be healthy and wealthy. And that's just plain baloney. I mean, I've seen, elderly people in wheelchairs that have much greater faith than I have. And I'm supposed to think, well, because I'm healthy and maybe I have more money than they have, I must be holier than them. No, that's not biblical Christianity. Now, what Kenneth Hagin did, and this is all documented in a work written by D.R. McConnell, called A Different Gospel. Okay, A Different Gospel. And he was a student at Oral Roberts University. And Oral Roberts was bringing in these health and wealth preachers. Also, Oral Roberts, by the way, meant well, but he was into a hyper-Pentecostal belief system where he started misinterpreting the scriptures as well. So that he found unity with the health and wealth guys. But Kenneth Hagin really started the health and wealth heresy by plagiarizing the works of E.W. Kenyon. E.W. Kenyon was a minister who ministered in the Seattle area in the early 1900s, okay? And what Kenyon was doing, E.W. Kenyon, he was trying to recover Christian healing. He thought that the church had lost the ability to heal, but he saw the mind science cults, the religion science cults, like Mary Baker Eddy's Christian Science, which was neither Christian nor scientific. They believed the whole physical realm doesn't even really exist. Sin doesn't exist. Death doesn't exist. Sickness doesn't exist. And just through the power of your mind. Man is God, and through the power of your mind, you just got to speak wellness into existence and that type of thing. Unity School of Christianity, a heretical offshoot of Christian Science. There was the religious science movement as well, these mind science cults. And there was a lot of psychosomatic healings going on in them. Sometimes people who weren't really sick but thought they were because they were so negative in their thinking. And these guys, through positive affirmations, would make them feel better, okay? So they were documenting a bunch of pseudo-healings, okay? And so E.W. Kenyon said, well, we're missing that in Christianity. And so what he decided to do was to try to blend biblical Christianity with the mind science cults to get that healing power back, okay? And he would often say, these mind science, he wouldn't call them cults, he didn't think they were cultists, but these mind science people, if they just would acknowledge that Jesus died on the cross for their sins, physically died on the cross for their sins, they'd have it all. So he thought they were just missing one point. And I used to think of the mind science cults as blending biblical Christianity with Eastern religious thought, with Hinduism and Buddhist type thinking. That's not the case. The more I studied it, the more I realized there wasn't biblical Christianity. All they were doing was taking Eastern religious thought, kind of like the Force be with you. God's a non-personal force. God is everything and man is God. Worship of self. But they would took Eastern religious thought and proclaim that, and they pulled Bible verses out of context to support that kind of thinking. So the mind science cults are not a blending of biblical Christianity and Eastern religious thought. The mind science cults are Eastern religious thought taught using Christian terminology, but in reality, all the verses are taken out of their context. So when E.W. Kenyon tried to blend the mind science cults with biblical Christianity, that's where Hinduism and Eastern thought gets blended with biblical Christianity. So it is the health, wealth, and prosperity movement that is this heretical hybrid of true biblical Christianity blended with Eastern religious heretical thought. Now, I will say this. I doubt, I'd be very nervous if I was any of the pastors of these churches, these health and wealth churches. I'd be very nervous on a judgment day. I don't really know where they stand with the Lord because they talk out of both sides of their mouth. I would not be surprised if a good portion of their parishioners are saved. They're just, trusting in bogus preachers, but they are trusting in Jesus for salvation. I'm telling you, this doesn't work. Hank Hanegraaff, I got a lot of disagreements with Hank Hanegraaff, with the old Bible answer man. He told his guys, don't go to church this coming Sunday, and I want you to go. They went to Southern Baptist churches that don't preach this stuff. They preach the Bible. Go to Southern Baptist churches and look at the parking lots of the people and the parking lots of the pastoral staff. Then go, this is in Southern California, then go to the health and wealth churches and look at the cars in the parking lot and the cars in the pastoral staff. And what they found was the cars in the parking lot and then the parking lot for the pastoral staff at the Southern Baptist Church were not the greatest cars in the world. It didn't look just like a used car dealership. It looked like a used car dealership of problem cars with issues that hadn't been washed in a while. They did not look like a bunch of great cars that you'd want to buy, even in the pastoral staff. When you went to the health and wealth churches, the general parking lot looked the same way. A bunch of dumpy cars in the parking lot until you got to the parking for the pastoral staff. And that's when you saw the brand new, real expensive cars and the fancy cars. And so that's where Hank Hanegraaff argued that health and wealth and prosperity is like a pyramid scheme. It works for the guys on top. But there's a lot of people who walked away from Christianity because they claimed something in Jesus' name and never got it. So at Kenneth Hagin, what he did was he hired his staffers to plagiarize from the teachings of E.W. Kenyon, who didn't have as big of a following as Hagin had later on, a generation later. And so what D.R. McConnell does is he takes both columns, Kenneth Hagin's teachings, side by side with E.W. Kenyon, his writings with Kenyon's, and you could see these guys only changed 2 or 3 words. They didn't work real hard. I mean, they just pretty much plagiarized the whole thing. And Kenneth Hagin has, you know, some of his disciples are like Kenneth Copeland and Frederick Price, who just passed on not too long ago. Pray for these guys. Pray that they are true believers, whether they come to Christ and all. Jim Baker was into this health, wealth, and prosperity stuff, and he went to prison for sexual scandals and financial scandals. And when he was in prison, he said that he found that he was in love with everything on the master's table, but he wasn't in love with the master. And he needed to fall in love with the master. And if you're looking to Jesus for things, you know, I mean, that's like the kind of guy who only makes friends based on what can I get from that guy, you know? I've even known some ministers, some famous ministers, who always attached themselves to somebody who was a couple rungs higher in popularity, and then when that guy died, they would attach themselves to another guy a couple rungs higher, and just using people. Listen, fall in love with Jesus. Okay? By the way, Jesus promises us crowns and thrones. But that's his business. Okay? Our business is to deny ourselves, pick up a cross, and follow him.